Once again, it's an honor and a pleasure to be here today, albeit virtually, and to have the opportunity to deliver this keynote lecture. I was thinking as I was putting together the slides, I would get restless when there aren't slides, but particularly now that we're doing things online, it's so strange how Zoom has become the new normal for all of us. A year ago, I was turning down speaking engagements because we miss so much when we're not in person. And I still feel that way. And I'm sure you share my hope that we'll soon be able to resume in-person conferences and the conversations over coffee and Danish and so forth. The new reality, however, is that we're all more closely tied to our computers and our electronic devices than we might have ever thought possible. And I think these ties are responsible in part for the GameStop frenzy, which of course provides the seeds for my talk today. So this is of course a conference about financial literacy and financial education. And when we talk about financial literacy, we think, or at least I think, about people managing their checking accounts, their credit card bills, their car loans, and maybe their retirement savings if they have any. Anna has led commentators, Anna and her frequent co-author Olivia Mitchell, in identifying widespread limits on financial literacy around the world. And a host of commentators have explored what do those limits mean with respect to capital market participation, wealth accumulation, and financial security. So why talk about GameStop? The GameStop trading frenzy, I think, focuses our attention on a slightly different set of issues. Yet the potential implications of limited financial literacy remain and perhaps take on new meaning if what GameStop means is that we're going to have ongoing engagement by retail investors in stock trading. So, right, here are some of the ways that retail investors got involved in GameStop. Right? And of course, we all know that GameStop has exposed new potential vulnerabilities. Okay. Financial literacy, the things that you're all talking about and presenting papers about over the next couple of days, I think can help. So, where have the regulators been? In recent years, retail investors haven't gotten very much attention from securities regulators. Although the Securities and Exchange Commission's three-part mandate includes investor protection, everybody's kind of focused on protecting retail investors by, one, limiting their access. So retail investors can't trade in the private markets. They can't buy stock in unicorns and things like that. And two, by supervising intermediaries, the brokers and the financial advisors with whom retail investors interact, right? So large institutional investors, they dominate the market, the BlackRocks and the Vanguards of the world, right? And we protect retail investors by saying, okay, you invest in the diversified mutual funds that they offer, and we'll protect you by protecting the intermediaries and leaving things like stock trading to trained professionals. Well, small retail investors don't seem, if GameStop is any indication, to be satisfied with this. They're showing an increasing appetite for self-directed investing. They've been spurred on by user-friendly online brokers, app-based trading, accounts that don't require minimum balances, and that don't impose commissions or trading fees. Barriers to market participation, traditional barriers, have been lowered. For example, today retail investors can buy fractional shares, which means they can own a piece even of costly companies like Amazon and Tesla, and they can achieve some level of portfolio diversification, even in small accounts. These factors which contributed to an increase in retail investor stock market participation, were likely magnified by the lockdown, which left many with limited entertainment options, a lot of time staring at their electronic devices, growing reliance on social media for some form, albeit limited, of human interaction, and for many, the liquidity of pandemic relief checks. So, a lot of people view these developments with despair, or at least trepidation. They warn that retail investors don't understand the risks of investing in the stock market. They'll be swayed by the power of the crowd, or seduced into excess leverage or unsuitable options positions. And they further warn that these quote unquote dumb investors will lose money that they can't afford to lose, and at the same time increase volatility and undermine the rationality of the trading markets. So I'm not so sure. First of all, right, the claim that institutional investors are smart and retail investors are dumb, I think that's overstated. There obviously are lots of examples of institutional investors both following the herd and making disastrous investing decisions, buying overhyped and fraudulent companies, buying products they don't understand, and being overconfident in their ability to time the highs and lows of the market. Enron, CDOs, a couple of examples that come to mind. As an aside, institutional investors have free reign in the lightly regulated private markets, but SoftBank's sophistication didn't protect it from losing billions of dollars when it invested in WeWork. In addition, meme stocks aren't the only stocks to experience dramatic price fluctuations. Tesla, whose public float is owned predominantly by institutional investors, at one time had a greater market capitalization than that of Ford, General Motors, and Toyota combined. Most recently, a third of that market cap evaporated, giving Tesla the record for the company to lose the most value in terms of market cap ever. Right? Last week's trade losses by Archegos and their impact on the markets shows that institutional investors and their misguided behavior can also affect market volatility and the potential for systemic risk. So at a conference like this, we focus on financial literacy and retail investors. Maybe we need a little more financial literacy for institutions. So that's one myth, I think, of the GameStop saga, right? Another is that retail investors are trading on hype and not fundamentals. Now, of course, we don't know what's going to happen with GameStop. If we did, we all wouldn't be at this conference. We'd just be focusing exclusively on day trading. Maybe some of you are when my talk gets a little bit boring, but time will tell how irrational the retail investor in GameStop is, right? Conceitedly, 8 months ago, the company's stock was trading as low as $4 a share. Conceitedly, GameStop's price swings have been so large that the stock exchange imposed 7 trading halts in a single day. And conceitedly, experts have criticized the business model as obsolete, and the stock price fell abruptly once regulators started looking at things and Congress started holding hearings. But GameStop's arguably a company in play. The company's stock price started to rise after activist and Chewy co-founder Ryan Cohn announced that he'd purchased a large stake in the company. Now, stock prices typically rise at the prospect of shareholder activism. Most of GameStop's price increase occurred in January, after GameStop signaled that it was receptive to Cohn's plans and agreed to add him and 2 other former Chewy executives to its board. Now, why did the price rise? Because the additions raised the possibility that the new directors could provide guidance to change the direction of the company's business and to enable it to compete successfully in the digital marketplace. Now, time will tell whether this plan works. The lesson for us is there's at least a plausible case that GameStop's price, at some point when the retail investors were buying, was undervalued. So I don't think retail participation can be so readily dismissed as uninformed and irrational. So, third, right? Retail investors have been criticized for responding to trading hype, the crowd power of social media. Now, for somebody as old as me, right, I'm still trying to get a handle on social media and its influence over the millennials and the even younger investors in the marketplace, right? But we have to accept, I think, the fact that we have a new generation of investors, a new generation of stock traders. And the fact that they make use of different technology, the fact that they use a different range of information sources, right? That doesn't somehow delegitimize their trading activity. And what FINRA's own data shows is that the people who opened new accounts in 2020, the people who invested in GameStop and other meme stocks were younger, were more diverse, and were less wealthy than traditional retail investors, right? So what we see is a change in what's going on here. Now, it's true that the congressional testimony of the GameStop frenzy has emphasized the risks associated with app-based trading. But there's something a little troubling about the idea that the highly regulated public capital markets are unsafe for retail investors. First of all, what do we mean by unsafe? These are companies that publish reports about their financial condition and their business operations on a regular basis. We're told that if app-based brokers are engaging retail investors, there must be something wrong. And SEC Commissioner Peirce observed, telling investors that they can't make decisions for themselves only supports their suspicions that the capital markets are for the wealthy. I think that's just the wrong takeaway from the GameStop frenzy. Rather, and this is my next point, I think there's something kind of attractive about the prospect of reconnecting ordinary investors and US businesses, right? So here are some of the points, some of my thoughts on this. A growing percentage of retail investors we know have exposure to the capital markets through their 401k plans. But what does that mean? You invest through a target date fund or an index fund, you own the market as a whole. For most of these investors, they don't even know what they're invested in. And these intermediated products separate investors from the feeling that they're participating in and part of real businesses. By contrast, according to one source, the GameStop frenzy led 28% of US investors to invest in GameStop or other meme stocks in January of 2021. That's a tremendous amount of direct investing. It's a tremendous amount of engagement. Why meme stocks? Part of the attraction is that these are businesses that ordinary people know. GameStop, AMC, Express, Costs. This familiarity means they can read the research. They can understand the business plan. They can form an opinion. Will GameStop successfully migrate to an online retail business? Will in-person movie theaters be profitable in a post-pandemic world? Right? Regular people can be engaged in the challenges that businesses are facing in a demanding new market environment. And from a social perspective, I think that's tremendously attractive. Finally, stock market participation is correlated with financial well-being, not just wealth, but also measures like subjective financial security. There are good reasons for this. The capital markets are an important mechanism for wealth creation. The equity risk premium hasn't gone away. And on average, even an ordinary retail investor can build a better nest egg through capital market participation. So the prospect that the capital markets can become more inclusive and that the potential gains of equity investing are accessible to a broader range of people strikes me as tremendously exciting. Stock market participation is also correlated with financial literacy. And while researchers continue to explore the reasons for this correlation, one possible explanation is that engagement increases investor interest and prompts them to seek out financial education, right? So let me turn to financial education. Let me turn more directly, right? So the influx of retail investors into online stock purchasing creates a need and an opportunity to think more expansively about financial literacy. How vulnerable is this new generation? What kind of financial knowledge would enable them to protect themselves sufficiently as they venture into the capital markets? And for regulators, do trading apps and social media platforms lower the barriers to access, not just to trading, but to acquiring financial knowledge? Indeed, do they offer an opportunity to make financial literacy both easier and, dare I say it, trendy? So in terms of vulnerability, I don't want to understate the case that many of the investors caught up in the trading frenzy were vulnerable. Right? For a substantial number, their investment in these meme stocks was their first exposure to the capital markets. People who use Robinhood, Webull, other app-based trading platforms tend to be younger and less experienced than traditional investors. They also tend to be small investors. The median account size at Robinhood is about $240. Perhaps more worrying is the way people became investors. Many people opened brokerage accounts in response to the hype on Reddit, the Reddit community known as Wall Street Bets. And they looked to social media rather than trained investment professionals for advice on their trading strategies. According to CNBC, there were 3.7 million downloads of the Robinhood app in January 2021. No surprise that Robinhood's getting ready to do an IPO, right? GameStop stock has also been extremely volatile, which may increase investor anxiety and encourage risky behaviors, such as frequent trading, trading on margin, and the use of options. On the other hand, at least according to the publicly available statistics, most of the investors in the trading frenzy purchased only a handful of shares. Most were not approved to buy stock on margin or to trade in options. If they lost money, it was likely on the order of what they might have lost in a pre-pandemic world traveling to Las Vegas or Atlantic City. And unlike the investors who lost millions to the licensed securities professional Bernie Madoff, the losses of investors who traded meme stocks went to other investors who made money. So the debate about whether GameStop investors were victims in need of greater regulatory protection misses the point. App-based trading, like app-based banking, dating, and food delivery, is here for good. Similarly, the financial markets are going to have to adapt to the world of social media. Rather than focus on reversing these trends, I suggest that particularly for participants in this conference, these trends should be viewed as opportunities. Specifically, it's my proposition that the GameStop frenzy heightens the need for financial literacy education and offers unprecedented opportunities to make that education accessible, relevant, and even fun. Right? So here's my slide on Robinhood. Robinhood's been the subject of, and I don't mean to pick on Robinhood, but it's been the subject of a lot of criticism about how its trading app gamifies investing. Right? The Massachusetts Attorney General brought a complaint that said Robinhood's app because it displays confetti, makes investing too attractive to young investors in an effort to generate greater engagement. Better Markets says the Robinhood app incorporates addictive, endorphin-engendering game features. Right? Now, don't worry. Robinhood just announced they're getting rid of the confetti. So you're no longer going to be addicted by using the Robinhood app. But judging by Robinhood's 13 million users, its app does a pretty good job in making investing attractive to the regular public. Well, think about it. Right? For years, people have been bored with investing. Investing is dull. People don't want to do it. And the same thing is true of financial education. People find financial planning difficult and boring and are only too ready to delegate to a broker, to their employer, or to an index fund. Research shows, for example, with respect to retirement plans, that there's tremendous stickiness. People just go with whatever the default is, the default contribution, the default investment choice, because they don't want to be bothered. Right? So what happens when this app-based trading enters? All of a sudden, people are engaged. FINRA's 2020 survey found that of those new, young, diverse investors I was talking about, 61% reported that they enjoy investing. And the new investors in the FINRA survey said their second most frequently reported goal after saving for retirement was learning about investing. So maybe the solution is more confetti. Now, I don't mean to suggest that we're anywhere near there, right? Robinhood offers investor education through its Robinhood Learn site. Until this week, it hasn't offered investor education on its trading app. They announced they're going to start doing that. I think that's really exciting. They also promised that they're going to start incorporating interactive learning tools. So Robinhood, for one, is at least exploring the potential of bringing its skills at attracting young investors, its skills for gamification, not just to investing, but to financial education. And I was excited. I know Angela Hung is going to speak on the next panel about Robinhood and give us some data. But the need for this education is undeniable. App-based trading is hard. Investors tend to have really limited understanding of the products they're using. FINRA's survey said most investors didn't know whether they paid commissions, whether they had ever purchased fractional shares, and whether their account allowed them to purchase stock on margin. But fintech can do a lot more, right? Gamification, an entire generation wrote off stock investing as difficult and boring. Gamification can make not just investing fun, but financial education fun. Right? Think about the things that we can do with an app and social media, allowing people to level up, to achieve mastery, to gain points or titles. Robinhood rewards people with free stock. Well, why not reward people for financial literacy achievements with free stock? Trading platforms can also provide nudges to suggest that people reconsider unsafe or undesirable trading behaviors. Another component of the GameStop frenzy is the role of social media. We've all seen the postings by Roaring Kitty and others, right? Now, one concern has been raised about manipulation, and I don't want to speak to the issue. I don't want to suggest that I condone people using social media to spread false information. But social media is increasingly important as a source of entertainment and a source of information, right? So here again is the payoff for financial literacy. A friend told me a couple of weeks ago that she learned on TikTok how to cut her daughter's hair. Well, why not learn how to trade stocks? Why not learn the difference between stock and bonds? Why not learn how to save for retirement or balance your checkbook, right? Social media can also be used proactively to push information to investors when regulators identify a problem or a potential scam, right? Significantly, social media is not as passive as traditional financial education sources. It can encourage herding, it can encourage people to compete, and it can challenge widespread misconceptions. In short, right? And here's my little picture of games. Oh, well, too bad. In short, the GameStop frenzy is very much a product of new developments in the capital market. Fintech, app-based trading, stock slices, social media, all of these fun new things that we haven't really gotten used to. But what these developments show us is that investing can benefit from a new level of creativity. And that creativity shows considerable promise in lowering barriers to entry, and it should similarly be deployed to lower barriers to financial literacy. This conference has always had a special focus, not just on the need for financial education, but what makes financial education effective. And the GameStop frenzy offers us exciting new material to think about in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jill. I think you have kept the promise of being brilliant, provocative, thoughtful, and I love the message of financial literacy for all. Let's not leave out the institutional investor. Normally people tell me we need financial literacy for policymaker, but we will leave this for another discussion. I think you have so many important points to make, and I love this idea. Let's learn. Let's first of all look at this data and learn how to make financial education more effective. We have a few minutes for questions, and several people have asked questions. Let me ask the one that probably many economists would ask, which is, we should not forget the risks, though, right? I mean, one of the big problems potentially of this frenzy has been that people seem to be, engaged in individual stocks, right? And kind of this idea is also that, individuals buy individual stock you are familiar with, and this can bring even more risk. So what do you think about that? There are indeed, some worrisome also features, and how can we maybe, able to make sure that people are not indeed playing a game?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. And I do want to separate out, right? I mean, I think for a lot of the investors who have been trading GameStop and AMC over the last few months, investing really is a game. But they're not investing, a lot of them aren't investing very much money. A lot of them are trading stocks as opposed to, playing roulette or poker. I'm not sure that that's necessarily something that we need to get terribly excited about, right? And I don't mean, not all, but some investors clearly fall in that category. But for the others, I think the potential for using the app, for using social media to explain how to invest is just a great opportunity to talk about exactly the kind of financial literacy questions you've been talking about for years, right? So one of the focus in the standard financial literacy assessment is, do you understand diversification, right? If you're on the Robinhood app or the Webull app, there's nothing to prevent the app from giving you a little insight into diversification, as well as the tools for diversifying. So I talked about stock slices. Stock slices are a new thing, right? If you have $50 to invest, you can actually get a fair amount of diversification if you buy $5 slices as opposed to putting it all in a single company, right? It's pretty easy to tweak the app so it tells you how do you go about doing that, or it gives you some sort of measure. Am I diversified? Will adding this slice add to my diversification? So, this is really sort of a 10,000 foot overview, right? This is not the nuts and bolts of how should Robinhood or Webull or any other broker incorporate financial literacy. All I'm saying is within the app, within the social media tools that we have now, there are a lot of unexplored opportunities.
Yeah, that's a very, very important point. And just quickly, I know we are running out of time already, but what do you think, because of this and because so many of these people who are investing are young, right? What do you think of actually mandated financial literacy in school so that some of that learning happen before they actually engage into investing?
Well, Anna, you know, I'm a big fan of financial education, and I'm a big fan of financial education early on. When my daughter was in high school, she took a course in economics where they actually had to do sort of dummy investing in the stock market to learn how the stock market worked. So I think that's great. But I think we all have to recognize that, you know, just in time financial literacy education tends to be more effective. So even if I've got the foundation, at the time that I'm on the app, at the time that I'm looking to invest, that's when I really care about and when I'm really going to sort of remember the little tips that I get. And I think you're absolutely right. You know, getting people in, the great thing about the current trading movement is that we're engaging people in the market at a young age when they have the energy, when they have the, you know, they're not that far removed from the school courses, and they can really start to see the payoff.
Thank you so much. Actually, we would love to ask you more questions, but we have run out of time. I just want to thank you so much for these incredible insights, for these for challenging us as well to think more and to think and look at what has happened. You know, use some of the facts during the pandemic to really rethink, right? How do we protect and how do we educate? And I always say, you know, we shouldn't go back to the normal before the pandemic because that normal was not good enough. So you gave us, I think, a lot of thoughts about how to rethink going forward, I think, both investor protection and education.